feeling. So I guess, we would say that this is, but I am like, Darcy, I love you. You were like one of the strongest, just mamas and all that Scorpio. We're going to have my cousin on. She's a Scorpio. I just have endless love and respect for the Scorpios in my life because they really, chipmunk, like, oh, I know it. Okay, so what was I saying? How are we feeling? We are like legit officially entered what we refer to as the high season of retrograde. So we're in, Pluto retrograde started a few weeks ago. Then we had on April 25th. Then we had Saturn retrograde earlier this week. We talked about it a bunch. And then today we have Venus, the planet of love, beauty, affection, finances, pleasure, fun, went retrograde today. And that doesn't happen as often as the other retrogrades. Venus' cycle is more like 18 months or so. So we only get a Venus retrograde every like 2 years. So yeah, Dre's asking, did anyone have a hella weird night? I just had Chris with the K from our Cosmic Boss group give me a good download, I think, on some of the fog that I'm feeling with my Pisces energy. But yeah, last night I was up really late. I've been going to bed pretty like on time during this quarantine. I was up really late. I had wild dreams. It definitely, we're in it. This is a week of like, we're diving like into all the retrograde activity. So is it bad for relationships? No, it's not bad for relationships. The Venus retrograde, there are some traditional classic astrologers who would say like, it's an inopportune time for a wedding. And I know this year, a bunch of panels I went to and discussions I had, astrologers were kind of stressed out because they're like, oh, this is wedding season and we're going to be in Venus retrograde. But it seems like the coronavirus just kind of handled that for us, that we didn't have to worry. So some navigation, some tools, some things to reflect on. Venus retrograde is like, it's going to be here till June 25th, and it's in the sign of Gemini, which we know is the divine messenger, the sign of twins, the sign of like sacred partnership, like duality, like how we, as the as the soul growth, the soul evolution of the zodiac wheel goes on. It's like Aries, I, me, the initiator, I have an idea. And then it's like Taurus is like, I'm going to build that idea. I'm going to, figure out what I have around me that I can build something that lasts. And then Gemini is going to come in next, in the next few weeks as the sun moves there, but the Mercury is already there, Venus is already there. And Gemini asks like, okay, I want to speak, I want to listen, I want to like interact with someone else. So Gemini is the first sign of the zodiac that's about like you as you relate to another person. So Venus being in Gemini right now gives us a lot to reflect on. The air sign of Gemini is, to me, it feels so electric, this Venus retrograde cycle. Everything about Gemini feels really charged for me. Sagittarius is the opposite of Gemini, and Sagittarius can be a lot about like flying and exploring and adventure and stretching our boundaries and expanding our philosophies. But Gemini is a lot about like the people close to us and our neighborhoods and how we come back into being close, but in ways that feel supportive for two people. So just rattling off some of the downloads that I've had. Definitely a great time to work on new communication styles, up-leveling them. If you want to learn more about communicating, reading some books. I love Harville Hendricks. structured dialoguing, learning about active listening. That changed the game for me in my relationships. Venus and Gemini feels a lot about like redefining our boundaries. Like Esther Perel gave a great talk, I think it was on her YouTube, about just like the key to our like forward movement in terms of our feeling like nourished and grounded and able to be ourselves right now in our relationships is going to be a lot about boundaries. Like she said something like, you can't just flip down the laptop, shove it aside, and start eating dinner in that same spot. We need to define the boundaries and define like, my cousin always talks about this poem of like, she's coming on of like the you and then me and who those were before we were a we, like really tuning into that. And this Venus Gemini, and Gemini is just also like, is this breath of fresh air? So I know Venus retrograde can be stressful for people. Sorry, it's in my throat. I usually only get that little throat tickle when I talk to Abby, one of my clients, because I think she serves me up so much throat chakra energy that my chakras can't handle it. But the Gemini fresh air is like, feels like it's coming in like this effervescence, this electric charge to like reignite something in our life. Like reignite, you know, where have we been feeling a little dull or numb or just gray? Gemini is super fun. Gemini is flirtatious. Like I want to recommit to just being a little bit more flirtatious this Venus retrograde cycle. We want to review our values of what are the non-negotiables of what we need to receive pleasure, love, security, and what are the ways that once we say that that's a non-negotiable, what we have to live up to, how do we also give that? That's the Venus and Gemini. It's the giving, the receiving, the talking, and the listening. And really something that came through, I don't know if this is like totally what other astrologers would say, but this Venus and Gemini really feels like the retrograde right now is like this return to obviously curiosity, because I've heard me talking about that a bunch. I'm not going to go too much into that right now. But yeah, curiosity, staying curious, learning right now, but also Venus and Gemini, since this is air, Mercury air sign, it feels like this reminder to us that everything is energy. Every problem we wrestle with and grapple with, and I had some old stuff come up over the past few days, just stuff that made me feel like I was like 9 years old again, like just little insecurities or little feelings that came up. And I was like, oh, right, that's just energy that lives in me somewhere. So I want to use this retrograde cycle of like encouraging that to come out to the surface so I can look at it and talk to it. Very Venus and Gemini, listen to it, journal on it, process it, but then make time to like get an energy clearing. I just booked, a session with my personal healer, Jamie of Lexi Eve, for this weekend, because I'm like, I want to remember Venus and Gemini teaches us that everything is ether, everything is energy. These things that feel so heavy, these things that we grapple with, we have to remember like they're just energy. Feelings are just energy, which I think for me helps break it down a little bit. It feels like less daunting, something we have to figure out, more just about like, okay, how can I invite this to the surface and clear it out? I'm looking at, there's these Mr. Sketch markers next to me. I'm in my little sun porch where I do my creative stuff. And there's these little bubbles on the Mr. Sketch. And I'm imagining this Venus and Gemini feels like these little bubbles coming to the surface. Hi, Mama. Hi. Here she is. Rocking, serving us some earring swag this morning.
I did that for you, totally.
I am so in love with this. You put the earring. This quarantine's all about earrings.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm wearing my naughty sweatshirt, which I didn't realize until I was doing my live. And someone was like, your t-shirt says naughty.
You're like, oh, wait.
Like, it sure does.
Did you get that at Girl Talk or no? Where'd you get that?
Totally.
Oh.
I on one side and naughty on the other. Every time I wear it, I was like, oh, that's such a need to have it. And I'm like, I called Girl Talk to order more, but I don't think
I know, we need to get, that is such a good Venus and Gemini. Also, I feel like just sweatshirt, feeling a little naughty.
I didn't even realize, literally, I went out to uncover my tomato plant.
did. The naughty life chose me. I didn't choose it.
What's up, Mama?
What's going on? I was actually laughing this morning, just to fill in the people watching. This is like a side cousin chat we're about to have, but we have a group chat with our cousins, and the elder cousins, and we went through that whole thing. I think you brought it up with like the eye candy yesterday, and I was just thinking like, this is such a Venus and Gemini. It's not like we ever talk about that ever, but like this thing of Venus and Gemini retrograde feels like this return, and Gemini is so like flirtatious and silly, and there's heavier things you want to learn through it, like our communications and up leveling them. But it's like, it's like that spring fever, like flirtatious, just hyper butterflies in the belly feeling. And I was like, oh yeah, yesterday our group chat of like me sending out my celebrity crushes, which I haven't thought of that in years, was like so fun. It was so good. So actually, I just want to thank you for that. That was really.
Well, Keanu Reeves, right, in that picture, that's what it was, a picture of Keanu Reeves from the 90s. Oh my God.
We're talking about Keanu.
And what's so funny is that when I did my list, I literally thought about it, like every one of those men, sorry, they were all men, but every one of those men was like their voices. I could like hear their voices. And that's so Gemini, right?
That's so Gemini. Like, yeah. Like, talk. Like, let me listen to you. Talk dirty to me. Tell me your raspy voices. Crack jokes with me. I also realized that everyone I was attracted to, man or woman, was just someone that I knew would like make me laugh. Probably. I mean, minus when I gave the shout outs, just Brad Pitt's abs. Like, sorry to whatever that's called, like objectify him. But everyone else was someone else like, no, I feel like you just make me like belly laugh, or like it was really fun to like text back and forth with you. But all of yours were such like voice hotties, the ear candy. I was like, yeah, they all have like amazing
I didn't
voices.
know that was like a thing until I typed it out, and I was like, I don't even care how they look. I think I read the recipes with that voice. Like,
if you appreciate the group text like processing, like something like it's like all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute. Oh yeah, like I didn't realize that the voice thing totally does it for me.
It's so funny.
So what else is going on? What feels present for you right now? I always love tapping into whatever your mind is musing on, your heart is musing on right now.
I'm so happy to see you. I'm feeling like I guess that is that Gemini thing, because I'm feeling like so energized by even just like these quick connections with people. I'm feeling more I'm pretty introverted, but I like am feeling that like we were talking about July, and I was like so excited. I was like, I'm gonna see my cousins and I'm gonna hug them. But who I was watching or thinking about yesterday? Kenny, her last meeting?
Yeah.
She wrote this thing on Venus retrograde in Gemini. I don't know if you read it. It was super interesting, but she was saying that the last time it was retrograde in Gemini was 2012, right when Griffin was born. And so I was thinking a lot about that, like what she was like, whatever got planted for you then, like whatever thing kind of expanded or got your curiosity or you saw differently or whatever, she was like, that's the thing that's present for you now. And I don't know if she even said this, but my thought, the way I took it was like, and wants to seek further expansion during this Venus retrograde. And what I pulled, and you know the story of like Griffin's birth. I had this this beyond like the ocean move through me experience of giving birth. It was such a beautiful, powerful, empowering experience for me. And when I pulled the cards this morning, I pulled Middle World from the shamanic deck. And so I was just like, the things we've talked about before, but this idea of like the angels weep for what it means to be human, like that feels really present for me. Like there are deep rivers of pain that are existing for me and for the world right now, right? We all feel that, like deep rivers of loneliness and grief and lostness. But what I've been thinking about the past couple of days is like, well, A, being with it, but B, like the way that pleasure and pain, especially in like a Venus moment, the way pleasure and pain like kind of nest together and you don't get one without the other. And even like in pain, like when you have a really big cry, like you have a deep, like I had this one like breakdown the past couple weeks where I was crying so hard that like my bones, I was like, can my bones sustain the amount of like crying that I'm doing right now? But what I was thinking, but even that, there's like a pleasure in that. right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's like the release of that. It's like that you
Mm-hmm.
survive it, that your heart opens to reveal it. Like, so that's what's on my mind for this morning. It's just this idea of like, it is exquisite to be human.
Mm-hmm.
And something about being present with that.
Mm-hmm.
So
I love that. Yeah, that's that quote that Kirsten's referencing, like something that like you don't remember where you found it, but you probably told it to me in like 2012.
Probably.
And
yeah,
when I was going through like such my everything, dark night of the soul, Saturn return, such just like just finding out like what is real, what is steady ground, where is like some little like slivers of light to find in that quote. And I think about that like probably, if not on the daily, like definitely once a week without exaggerating. I think of that quote.
Yeah,
like
me too.
The angels, like the only reason the angels weep is just like for the grief of never being human, for experiencing the high highs, the low lows, all the in between. And I think about that when I'm like stuck in traffic. I think about those moments where I feel like that heaviness of like shame. I think about those moments where you're just like, I fucked up again. Or I think about that. It's like, oh, like this is part of this wild ride that we only get to do in being human. And I think some people identify as being more like spiritual beings, and sometimes we resist this human body experience that's been coming up a lot in my sessions, like this week for people. So I think that's such a good reminder of like why it's so precious to like, and why we're here in these human bodies. And the Gemini pleasure pain, like interweaving, and the like the sweet and the sour, and like that old quote from some movie, like you don't get the sweet without the sour. That's so, it's so true. And so the contrast, how do we even know what pleasure felt like without pain, and pain without pleasure, and how it's all, so we were joking around about how Saturn to me is like leather daddy energy, which is also just ties into a completely different pleasure pain example.
But equally relevant, because we're so naughty. Equally
relevant, I'm naughty. And I'm like, yeah, that really works on both ends. So, but it is so true. I think we all can just resonate with like that feeling of crying or in a river or something, like just moment of such exquisite pain. Like there's some word in French for it, like exquisite douleur or something. And it's like this like deep pain that like breaks you wide open though. And then what comes after, like that rush and that river feels so good. Or conversely, like there's things that bring us a lot of pleasure and joy, and ultimately can like also destroy us, which is part of like being vulnerable in love. So
you just covered your mouth. You're like,
oh God, like that's just such a truth. Like that's such a truth.
I don't want to say that.
I know. I'm reading the Glennon Doyle. I just like kind of started listening to it on Audible on my walks, and she talks about like, you read it the whole, right, or like you're reading it, but the whole chapter of her like when she became like kind of 10 at that age, and she started feeling like the heaviness of the world, and like not wanting to love something because she realized she couldn't lose it. So she just started like shutting herself down and being really numb and like escaping life. And that feels very relevant right now too. Like the choice is to shut down to all of the pain and the pleasure. It all gets shut down from the same valve.
Yeah.
And then there goes like the aliveness. And I was reading Joseph Campbell earlier this week, and he talked again. It's like, we're not here to be happy. We're not here to understand the meaning of life. Like we're just here because we crave the experience of being fully alive. And all of that feels so Gemini. Like Gemini feels like this effervescent, like electric energy, not good or bad. Like it's not like, oh, an electric positive energy or negative. It just feels very alive, like that air energy right now.
And the way that like when you say that, it feels like it's not the vibrancy, but it's like the electricity. Like it's something like it's the electricity that's, and you're right, like it's not neither good nor bad, but it is something to experience. And and maybe that's why I feel like lit up by this. You know, my Gemini moon, maybe there's some part of me that just like gets this, or you know, it's a little bit like that. I don't know. It's a little bit like that Scorpio, there's, when you're saying that, something about it makes me feel like you might want to flee. Like you might want to.
It's too much.
Gemini.
It's a live wire too, so it's like.
Yeah, like you might want to just get out of Dodge a little bit. Huge crash. But what I was thinking about, and I was thinking about that middle world card, was like, that's amazing. Like the Gemini, like the ability to like launch and leave your body and like be out in the ethers and like mix and match and have your mind blown by the experience of being spiritual and being on like these other planes. But that's not this experience. Like that's not what we're here to do. And right. I think that, and if you can translate the idea of heaviness into groundedness, which sounds cliche, but if you think about it from this like lightning bolt or this grounding wire or this electricity thing, like your body is actually your safety. And Teddy talked about that too. This I don't know if someone else did. Someone else read something about Taurus and Scorpio, and the polarity of Taurus and Scorpio. I don't know who. I wish I could remember who I read that. Who just wrote about that? But the idea of you can't explore the mystery without the stability, and you can't get lost in the stability. You need to always explore the mystery. And that's the thing with the Gemini, like something that does feel like this like electrical impulse, right?
Absolutely.
But you need the grounding wire to enjoy it. Otherwise,
to enjoy it.
Right. It'll fry you, right?
It'll fry you. It'll fry you to death, honey. Like just energy.
So I don't know exactly what to do with it, except that to like live it and to not wish it away, but at the same time not underestimate the amount of current energy that it's bringing to your life either.
Ooh. Play on words, but works. Current energy.
Yeah.
Like thinking about that, it's like a current of energy is moving through you right now. That's just current in this moment. Obviously we talked about this. We love to label things good or bad. It's a good time in my life. Am I having forward motion or am I not? Am I backsliding? But I think just this thing of like current. There's a current of energy hitting you, and you're the grounding pole for that. And like, what are we doing with that current energy? The current of energy. What is it? Just like charging you without, because knowing that that's what you need right now, like it's being blasted on you for a reason.
And when you say that, what I think about in retrograde is this idea of like expanding your container, like expanding your groundedness.
Yes.
So that, right, because that's what retrogrades offer us, right? It's not just like a lightning bolt. It's like this current that's almost like you're testing the system. I'm going to feed you more and more energy. I'm going to give you more and more vitality. I'm going to give you more and more exuberance and exhilaration and exquisiteness. And the Venus retrograde is like okay, well, how much can you take? And here you took that much and that was too much. And so now let's sit for a minute and ground into it for a minute and feel yourself for a minute. Okay, now I can take a little bit more. It is like this. It's actually, I don't know if that just feels
that
true.
Feels so right.
Really,
also, I appreciate
thought about it that way before, but that's the Venus Gemini can give us more capacity. It's actually training us to have more capacity. That to me feels very 2012. Like,
yes,
it was very much like what was for you and me. We're from very different places.
Yes,
but both of them were about expanding our capacity to be with our own pleasure and our own yearning heart, like pain or pleasure. What our heart was yearning for, to allow more space and capacity for that, which brings you to more vibrancy and more, more in it with life, like just more engagement with life, you know.
I definitely going to rewatch this and take some notes, because all of your like channeling you're doing on this spot is like, first of all, for some reason, Venus and Gemini, like E words are flowing through, like the E, the electric, the engagement, the exuberance, enthusiasm. Like, and sometimes this happens where it's like
energy.
Sesame Street, like this is brought to you by the letter E. Like, go find your E words right now. So all those words you said, I'm like, yes, each of those words have like a charge, and like all those E words feel very like etheric and energetic and electric just in you saying them. Like, And then this thing of the Gemini, when you think about a current of energy, like to the grounding pole, like the Gemini feels like, you know, like the magnets, like, or like the poles that conduct the energy.
Negative charge.
So we're being asked, like, breathe in, like, okay, sit and reassess. Like, you know, the last time Venus was retrograde was 2018. So thinking about that, and then thinking back to 2012, like Chani said, it's like, okay, so it was kind of like, what in me has expanded? Where have I expanded that container? What feels good? What do I want to breathe into a little bit more to let this, like, this charge, this electricity, like, kind of move through me in a way that I can handle it, like, what, and kind of like feel not necessarily
and wield it,
like feel like alive,
have it take you over, but have it be something that you can then work with, right?
Yeah, that feels really spot on. And I am laughing because the Scorpio full moon, we talked so much about water and jumping into water, and now we're like out the water and we're getting like electrified.
That's dangerous, but we're doing.
We signed up for a dangerous ride as these humans. And something that you said, I'm so curious, for everyone to think about where they were in 2012. I know that was a big, both of our lives.
Well, that was the Mayan calendar too, right? Yeah. That was on the Mayan calendar.
That was like the new.
And connecting what you said about 2018. So I don't know what the other dots on the map are, but that feels like a very real jump to me in terms of my own ability to be alive, like Kundalini energy, like my own ability to carry myself, carry the fullness of my spirit in my body. 2012, 2018 now feels like an important.
Yeah, like you see the, and I do love
like
looking
clear arc line there.
Back as like astrology of like the looking back. It helps us understand more of the context of what's happening right now too. And then so we're so on the same page, cousins, because I was literally like bursting with my Venus and Gemini exuberant, buzzy energy to ask you. I remember this fall we were talking about Kundalini. You had said something. You were talking to your friend about Kundalini, and you told me something about like, yeah, it's not about this thing of getting like lighter. We talk about in like the spiritual community of like, oh, stepping more into the light. But you told me how like the interpretation, which totally resonated with me, the light is about becoming more like vibrant and electric in your field. Do you remember telling me that?
More magnetic, like that's like somehow there's some astrophysics like analogy in terms of like a black hole or a dark star. Like there's some different, and I have a lot to say about this.
I have a lot to say about this. Venus and Gemini. I have a lot to say.
So for me, the experience is like this. That instead of getting lighter, it becomes like you become denser, and there's like this way in which your density. And I think I said this to you last time too, but like I was thinking about the word sorcery.
Oh my god!
Very well. Like, there's an inevitability to what you put out there when you're also doing the work of drawing your energy in. And this book, I stalked Wild SOS, right? So admire. And then there's another woman. I'm gonna say her name wrong. Magna Mama. She does like the Path of the Jaguar.
Yeah, Kimberly's Magna Mama is her Instagram.
So, so the two of them did a little talk together, and they were actually each talking about. This is really interesting, I think. And Kimberly was saying that she is very scattered. She's very diffuse in her energy, and so when she's empowered, it feels like metal filings, like metal shavings. We talked about that analogy too. Coming back. She gets heavier, she gets like more compact, more dense. And then Liz was saying, what did Liz say? Liz said I can't remember what hers was, but hers was very different. And I love that they talked about what their embodied, what power feels like embodied in each of their bodies, because it's both such powerful, vibrant women. And they were completely different. I wish I could remember what Liz said. And so I asked them, I said, for me, it's this idea of gravity. When you think about this idea of lightness, but also density or magnetization or something like that. And Liz, like lightness, but also, it's like the words disappear for me. Like lightness, but also strength or pull, like ability to pull, power and lightness at the same time. And she said that's bone. And her whole thing is landing, right? So like we actually, as women, especially as white women, with stability, we have not landed in our bodies. And there's trauma associated with that, is, you know, and there's trauma associated with all the different ways of, you know, being women in bodies of all different colors, right? But for white women, this idea of white stability and this idea that we can't land into the earth, we can't land into our bones, we can't land into our psoas. And I told you, I took that African drumming, that class, and I literally could feel my body's resistance to getting low, my body's resistance to landing. And I have lots of thoughts about what that means and lots of thoughts about what that's about. But what Liz was saying about this idea of like density, but lightness, fullness, and gravitational pull, but also lightness, she said that's the feeling of landing in your bones. And so that's just interesting. What I think is really interesting, what it comes down to for me, is it's actually fascinating to me what empowered women feel in their bodies. It's like, what does it feel like to be a woman owning your power? I think it's a different embodied experience for all women. And I think that's interesting. Like obviously that gets me really excited. Like I get really curious about.
It's a great question to ask people. You know, people ask our women or femme identifying people, anyone who's been definitely like kind of power taken away from them too, particularly. I'm sure if you asked certain people what power felt like to them, it would be kind of
anyone who's been told their body is not.
Anyone who's been told their body is not the traditional power source, and asking them, and that's probably I would say a good invitation for anyone watching, for a meditation this morning or a journaling exercise. It's like, what does power feel like in my body? And that way you know to recognize it, and that way you know what you're cultivating in this retrograde and what you're expanding your container for. Like thinking about a moment where you felt really powerful or like really alive, like the moment you thought you couldn't do something and then like you did it, or that moment that you, whatever that feels like to you, you know, stood up for yourself, launched that thing, set that boundary, went for that first kiss, wrote that post and clicked go, or left that situation that was toxic. Like thinking about those moments when you're like, ooh, I took my power back and it all flooded back into me. What does that feel like for me? And then asking other people. I think that's such a good inquisitive Gemini.
And to tie pleasure into that. So it's not just power. It's not like active. It's not active masculine. And there's so directive power, like directive conscious power is important to recognize, but also feminine magnetic power, and they're different, and they're both in you, and they're both in all of us. Right. But like feeling the distinction between those two, because I think that's something for me. It's less about they're different, but even Nina walked us through this thing where in this moment where you actually activate your womb brain, like your pelvic, the intelligence of your pelvic area. And hearing that voice, asking that voice what to do next, asking that voice what needs to be, what, you know, where you should be headed, what you should say yes, where you should say no. Kendra also talks about that, but how your yes and no already lives in your womb space, and we bypass it. Yeah. But that's like another interesting thing to think about in Gemini and relationship to Venus. It's like, what voice am I listening to? Is this thing empowering me or disempowering me? Am I feeling more myself or less myself? Like just all of those questions. And like there's no right or wrong. And there's moments where you want to be fluid. You want to be in all the different zones. Sorry, I'm getting a little heady about it, but it's something that I'm very curious about. Yeah. And my brain starts getting excited.
Your Gemini moon is, I know, I love the curiosity. I love the exploring that, and using, again, like retrogrades are our whatever permission slip from the universe, the cosmic calendar invite to explore these things, like just have time to think about, okay, what if I don't have to actively make a decision and do something right now because that thing's not going to be supported anyway by the universe. Like we kind of have like, you know, we're just in the, like, we're grounded, sort of, so to speak. And it's like, okay, well, thinking about during this time, like these decisions that are all swirling around my head, and, you know, Venus and Gemini, one of the more like shadowy octaves of it can just be like analysis paralysis or the anxiety that comes from too many options. So using this cycle, this retrograde, to do some of that, the like feeling into the like talking and listening to your body and tuning into that power. And sometimes I think also exploring our own, I mean, I just did a whole workshop earlier, so I'm repeating myself about this, but the masculine, feminine that lives within us. And we talk a lot about like Mars and Venus. And like that just shows you in astrology, like we all have a masculine force in us and we all have a Venus, like feminine receptive force in us that's just, and they're equally powerful and potent. And like
those are the polarities you're talking about, right? Like, and so
yeah.
maybe that's the exploration is actually hearing both of those voices and balancing them. So instead of just hearing your head voice, getting in your head space, are you in your belly space or your womb space? Are you hearing that voice as well? And like, because then like Gemini, dialogue, duality, polarity, like just to have that kind of conversation, also the masculine and feminine. Are you clear on your active power, your Mars power, your aggressive power? And are you clear on your passive receptive power and your magnetism? So that's just an interesting, maybe that's why my brain gets like really buzzy and excited, because there's so much richness in an individual human having those dialogues, right?
Exactly. Like I imagine when you said that, I imagine like putting in the request, like the question into your body, and it being like a circuit board lit up of like information and things you're learning. And I really invite everyone listening to this, and I invite myself and I invite you, Kirsten, of like in this Venus and Gemini, like that duality you said, like that is so, you know, holding polarity, duality, holding paradox, holding self-contradicting, like why do I want independence sometimes, but I also want to be cuddled? Why do I want like freedom and stability? And you know, all these, there's amazing thought leaders. I reference Esther Perel, but she talks about like that's where desire comes from, is in that balance. And I think that we have to acknowledge sometimes we just want ourselves to be neat and tidy, and it's a lot easier for our brains to figure out. But like I always need independence, so therefore I'm an independent person. This is my map of life. But like we need to tune in and ask ourselves and feel into all those things, into the Mars and Venus, into the duality within us, and just I think like allowing ourselves, to me, expanding our container feels like holding space for contradictions too, like, and holding space for things that challenge our beliefs about ourselves, or holding things that feel like, wow, I am a walking paradox.
Totally. And John Wineland would say, right, that like the feminine in us yearns for love and the masculine in us yearns for freedom, but we have both. So like we are always yearning for love and freedom at the same time, which is a contradiction and is a paradox and is where life is. Like that's where the excitement is.
Tension. I know. Yeah, that's so good. Well, we have one question on here. I might pull it up and see if we have, I don't know, a real question or a spam question. Because then I get questions that are just like funny spam. Okay, so let's see. Someone says, how would you guys help someone who you know is really struggling at the moment with all these energies? And I guess we kind of just answered that, but if you wanted to speak anything
what
more.
Does it say but is something? Does it say something or it just gets cut off?
I don't know how to.
I think you have to come. I think you need to. It's not you. So when you're struggling with these energies, it's part of the story is it's all on me to figure this out. And I think we need to lean on whatever the tools are for us, right? So the obvious one is the earth. Like you go outside, put your feet on the ground, barefoot or not, and feel the fact that the earth is spinning and the earth is vibrant and the earth is working and that there's energy moving that is in you, not like of you. Because I think for me, this is personal, right? I hope it resonates. I hope it offers something. But for me, when it feels overwhelming is because I feel that's my toxic masculine, my teacher would call it, that thinks it's all on me. It's all on me to figure this out. It's all on me to make a plan. It's all on me to heal this. It's all on me to fix this. And so you just want to bring healthy doses of compassion and self-love and whatever you can lean on. So if you can lean on God, if you can lean on your ancestors, if you can lean on nature, if you can lean on, God, goddess, if you can lean on angels, if you can lean on maybe it's real life people, but like to realize this isn't coming, this is in you, but you're not alone in it, is just a really important reminder. For me, I have my own process going on, and this came up. A woman was talking about, as a mom who's, with her children mostly alone with 3 children, the loneliness is gripping. And so for me, I have to do real meditative work on my divine masculine. He doesn't exist in the world, and yet he is a very real energy in my life that I like lean on. Like, I don't want to do this on my own. Like my son talked about this in one of the cards he pulled, like, imagine the big bear behind you. Who are your animal guides that can be with you? Maybe you want jaguar with you. Maybe you want bear with you. Maybe you want lion, but find like an energy of like safety and something that holds you.
Okay, so
yeah. So
elaborating, a friend who has 2 kids and struggling but resisting help.
Yeah, I mean, you just send. The other thing is, we can't do this for anyone else, and that is, talk about exquisite pain. If that is
the most exquisite
channel
pain.
of exquisite pain in my life, and I imagine in everyone's life, like if I could heal people for themselves, I would be doing it a lot. I would really be putting a lot of energy there, and I have put a lot of energy there.
I have tried.
I say this laughing. I could also be crying.
It's a common thing.
It's not an easy thing to say. So I think you offer your support and you offer your groundedness. Like you feel your groundedness. You feel your connection to the luminescent grid. You feel your connection to her energetically. Like you ground yourself, and my hope in doing that for myself is that then I become a place of grounding in the grid that somehow or another she can lean on it. When she's ready, she can lean on it. When she's ready, she can see me and say, I can breathe for a minute. Like whatever the thing is, but that's out of our hands. Like, we can only be responsible for.
Yeah. You taught me something, because this is something with all of my boundary work is hard for me to, like you said, like to not want to just go in and be able to help someone or spare them pain or help them as they kind of, resist being helped. And so the thing that you just mentioned, like all of that, I just want to like package that up for people. Like, what is it? Like sending someone that compassion and love from that space of consciousness while grounding yourself. Like my shamanic teacher says, like the first thing, if you find out someone has, something like this lung thing we're all going through, he's like, the best thing you could do is like sit on the earth every day, ground into it, and like send your own lungs love, like every day. And like you're putting that into the grid, into the ley lines. And when they're ready to lean back, like you said, it's like right there. Like you've already built up their energetic support, and they know, they feel it. Like people have moments like, I don't know what it was, but one day it just clicked and I felt held for that moment. That was going to be, I thought like my breakdown became my breakthrough. And it's because like you're laying that like energetic work, I feel like feels really good. And then something you taught me, speaking of this polarity, like this time, I think it was even just this time last year, it feels like a million years ago, but I was struggling again with wanting to help someone and just not knowing how to get in there and do that work for them. And you actually told me about the masculine feminine like polarity of like connect in with my masculine, something that holds me, and then my feminine guides that are giving me like compassion and love and joy and like holding me in this masculine feminine space. And then to connect in with that person's masculine feminine guides and like speak to them and like kind of like activating those two and like feeling myself held, like taught between them, and then sending that love to their masculine feminine guides, energy, angels. And that was huge for me because they have that. That's what's also empowering. Like they have that.
Like that's the important thing to remember is that when we look at someone else, and this is, I hope I say this clearly and I hope it comes across like really pure without any judgment at all, because I've been in every angle of trying to help someone that exists. But when you look at someone and say, I need to fix this for them or help them, you're disempowering them. And I would love if you could reframe it and see her and say, look at the beauty of her journey. Look how she's struggling now, and look how she will find her way. For you to hold that vision for her, that higher vision of her of like, I see you, and I see how strong you are, and I see how capable you are, and I see that even in your pain, there's such beauty, And I know that it's going to contrast with the joy that's going to come. I know it's going to contrast with the beauty and the pleasure that's going to come. So for you to hold, again, like holding that vision for her that doesn't play into any story of disempowering her, because we all made our choices. Like we all came here to experience, again, like none of us wanted to, maybe some of us do, but none of us want it to be like a totally easy ride, right? Because then there's no tension. There's no tension. Yeah, there's no vitality. There's no radiance in that.
That's so good.
That's
we talked to Dre, who's one of my cosmic bosses, all of Monday night was talking about the roles that we play in which we disempower ourselves and others and how we disengage from that. So that was a beautiful, like actually synthesis of exactly all we talked about on Monday. And you see why, because once you step into those roles, it drains their energy and it like casts like a spell sort of over them, or like, oh, something is wrong, or like needs to be fixed. Whereas looking at them, like, look at this, look how true their story is right now. Look at this, their life, and they're living it, and it's so beautiful and vibrant, and holding that space for them of like, you're held in this, like you're not alone in this, is just, is very powerful. And it's very, it like, you feel it right when you step back into it. Talking about that feeling of alignment, you feel yourself in the other role that feels really draining and exhausting, and then when you step back into that role, you feel like the channel, like the electric current come back of like, okay, that this is the place where we're meant to be in the sacred place.
And back to Gay Hendricks, our lovely man. We're either expanding or contracting. And there are moments when we're going to contract, and that's right. And there are moments when we're going to expand, and that's right. Pema Chodron, things are falling apart and coming together constantly, right? And like, that's just, I was saying this to the 5th graders, there's no such thing as stillness. There's contraction and expansion, and there's falling apart and coming together. And it's just, there's inhale and exhale. And that's all good, you know?
So good. Well, thank you. I hope that helps. Thank you for this. I do appreciate just the asking and the inquiring, very Gemini, but how we can get creative and curious of new ways of like supporting people in our lives. I think it's a beautiful gift. So thank you, Kirsten. I think
thank you, Maddie.
Thank you, everyone. Kirsten's tarot class starts on the 15th, right? That's Friday.
Yes.
So 2 more days to sign up. Are you still taking spots from people or no? Okay.
I'm so disorganized. Yes. Just message me versus going on the website.
Yeah. So DM Kirsten if you want. I'm so excited. Tarot for transformation. I love these little Wednesday chats. It feels like we just get like a plop of like clay or something from the universe, and we get to like mold it and play with it and like look at it and examine it and like, is this art? Is this a mess? Is it everything in between?
All the things. Oh, I love to see you. I miss you.
I miss you so much. I can't wait for our things that we have to look forward to. Plans somewhere in the future.
Totally one day.
All right. I love you and sending everyone love. Thank you all for watching, for your comments. Bye, everyone.
Love you, baby.
Bye. Love you, Kirsten. Bye. Thank you all.